A hawk wheeled through the wind-scoured sky, cutting lazy circles above the golden prairie. Below, under that vast, unforgiving light, a man stood alone. His back was bent slightly from years of labor, but his shoulders still held the shape of someone who'd carried too much loss. He held a wooden cross, raw and crooked, and forced it down into the hard, dry earth with a grunt. Beau McCrae, age 56, didn't speak much anymore. But as the dust swirled around his boots and the shadow of the cross lengthened behind him, he said something, "Ain't no one left but ghosts on this land." He knelt for a moment beside the grave, not praying, just remembering, then rose, brushed his hat against his thigh, and turned back toward the ranch. The wind picked up as he walked, tugging at his duster and howling through the broken fence posts like a song too old to remember the words. The ranch sat low on a flat stretch of prairie, like it was trying to disappear into the land. The house was small but strong, all worn timber and tin. A water pump leaned just left of the front porch. Nearby, a collapsed barn listed into the earth like an old drunk trying to stand. The land was tired. So was Beau. He unsaddled his horse, rubbed down the old gelding with slow, practiced hands, and gave a pat to Whiskey, his aging blue heeler, who wagged his tail twice and followed him inside. They didn't need to speak. The silence between them had become its own kind of language. Inside, Beau lit a lantern, its flickering light casting long shadows across the floorboards. He placed his rifle by the door, though he never strayed too far from it. On the wall above the hearth hung a faded gray coat, the uniform of a Confederate scout. The buttons were tarnished, the sleeves stiff from disuse. Below it, nailed to the mantel, a hand-carved wooden horse gathered dust. It had been his son's. Once, he poured himself a tin cup of coffee, black and bitter, and sat by the window. Outside, the prairie was turning dark, but he didn't light a second lamp. He didn't need to see the world beyond the glass to know what was out there. When I came home, the war was done. But the dying ... didn't stop. Emma, his wife, had taken sick first. The fever moved through her quick and quiet. His son, not even 9 years old, went slower, wheezing, coughing, skin so hot it steamed in the winter air. Beau had been too late, too slow. The ranch he built was supposed to be their beginning. Instead, it became a tomb. The townsfolk never said much, but they looked at him like he carried something they didn't want to catch. Some called him cursed. Others whispered darker names. Grave whisperer, widowmaker. He never corrected them. Let them believe whatever they needed to sleep at night. Once a month he rode to town for supplies. Never lingered. Never spoke unless he had to. He'd once pulled a man out of a river during a flood, nearly drowned doing it, but the man never thanked him. Just looked at him like he was some specter sent to drag him down again. Out on the porch, wind chimes Beau had made from old horseshoes clanked softly. Coyotes cried in the distance, sharp and lonely. Thunder rolled low beyond the far hills and the cattle shuffled. Anxious in the pen, Beau walked the fence line with a lantern and a coil of barbed wire over his shoulder. One of the posts had snapped in the storm last week. He cursed it under his breath as he worked the wire through bleeding fingers. His hands were cracked, split in places where no salve could reach. He wrapped the cut with a filthy bandana and kept going. This was what life had become: maintenance, chores, silence, not much else. But he kept at it because quitting wasn't something the land allowed. You lived or you died. Simple as that. He finished the last of the wire just as the first drops of rain began to patter down on the dirt. Nothing heavy, just enough to scent the air, that brief false promise of renewal. He stood out there a while longer, staring toward the hills. Whiskey paced beside him, ears pricked. "This land don't give second chances," he muttered. "Just room to bury your regrets." Later that night, Whiskey growled low from under the table. Beau didn't need words. He grabbed his rifle and stood still, eyes on the dark beyond the windows. Every board in the house creaked as if whispering a warning. Then he saw it on the far horizon. A plume of smoke, thin, rising slowly like a question. No lightning, no camp he knew of. Just smoke. He stood in the doorway long after the fire disappeared. Behind the curve of the earth. The next morning, things were off. The cattle gate was wide open, not broken, just swung open like someone had passed through without hurry. Beau knelt beside the tracks in the dirt. Bare feet, at least a dozen? Some small, some fast, judging by the depth and spread. One set turned hard near the trough like the runner had stumbled, or was bleeding dot and on the fence post caught between two nails. A single hawk feather shifted in the wind. He stared at it a long while, didn't touch it, just nodded once as if the land had spoken. He plucked it free and tucked it behind the nail on the barn door like a warning or a marker. He didn't know which yet. The air was colder that night. Whiskey wouldn't settle kept pacing the cabin, whining at the door, ears pulled back. Beau sat by the front window, Winchester across his lap, every lamp out, every breath held like a match ready to strike. Outside, the wind had gone still. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Then, just before dawn, something changed. Strange stillness spread across the land. The kind of quiet that comes right before a storm or just after a kill. Mist rolled in over the grass, thick and low. It slithered through the dry stalks like smoke, blurring the horizon. Beau stood on the porch, rifle leveled at the mist. His heart was steady, but his grip tightened, and then they came, 10 of them. Figures moving slow through the fog, part shadow, part silhouette. Bare feet, shawls, weather-worn tunics, wounded, exhausted. One carried a child on her back. Another led a blind elder by the hand. They didn't walk like soldiers. They walked like survivors. At the front walked a young woman. Her left leg was soaked in blood. But she moved forward, steady, until she was close enough for Beau to see her face. She raised both hands. Between them, she held a broken arrow split clean in two. A peace sign. Behind her stood a man unlike the rest. Tall, still as iron, hawk. Feather behind his ear. His eyes didn't move from Beau's, not hostile, not pleading, just waiting. Beau's finger didn't twitch on the trigger. Not yet. He stared at them a long while. The woman's chest rose and fell with pain, but she didn't speak. The children behind her looked more bone than boy. One clung to the other's shirt like they were afraid the wind might carry them off. Beau's jaw tensed. His voice, when it came, was gravel and frost. "You got 2 minutes," he said, "to tell me why I shouldn't shoot." The woman didn't flinch. She didn't speak either. Just held that broken arrow a little higher, her hands trembling from cold or blood loss, maybe both. Beau's rifle didn't lower, but something in his stance softened. The mist around them lifted in slow, spiraling tendrils, revealing the rest of the group. Kids, a woman barely older than the girl in front. 2 elders, one blind, led by a boy of no more than 10. And behind them, the man with the hawk feather, unmoving, unreadable. Beau stepped down from the porch. "Not far? Just enough? Anyone speak English?" He said. The young woman nodded once. "I'm Nahi," she said, her voice cracked like firewood. "We come from east. Our people were burned out, soldiers, settlers, we don't know. We ran 3 nights, 2 children already dead." She paused, then added softly, "We seek only to rest. One day, maybe 2, Beau glanced toward the horizon. Smoke no longer rose, but he could still smell the ruin on them. The coppery scent of blood and soot. He looked at the smallest girl, her feet bare and cracked, nose red from cold. "Anybody touch a fence, steal a calf, take 1 step into my house without say-so," he said, "I shoot." Now he nodded. "We understand." Beau jerked his chin toward the barn. "There's hay, water in the trough. Stay out of the tack room and keep the damn children from my fence line." They moved slow toward the barn like animals not yet sure. If the trap had sprung? The tall warrior at the rear waited until they'd all passed before walking. He didn't take his eyes off Beau once. Inside, Beau poured himself another tin of coffee and sat at the window. Whiskey growled but stayed. At the door, they both watched the barn through the mist. "I ain't built for company," Beau muttered. "Much less a damn parade." Still, when he finally stood, he had a length of cloth in one hand and a half-used bottle of spirits in the other. He stepped outside and walked to the barn. He didn't knock inside. Nahi sat with the bleeding leg stretched out, her shawl balled beneath it. One of the older women looked up at Beau, neither surprised nor welcoming. He tossed the rag and bottle to the floor. For the wound, he said. No one spoke. But the tall warrior stepped forward as if to stand between Beau and Nahi. Beau narrowed his eyes. You ain't in charge, he said. She is. Don't make me prove it. The man said nothing, just crouched beside the child he'd carried, rubbing her arms gently to warm them. Beau turned and left. That night the wind picked up again. From the porch, Beau could hear coughing from the barn. One of the children had it bad, wet and deep. Sounded close to the same rhythm his son used to have. He stared at the dark sky, rifle across his lap, and waited for the cold to settle into his bones. It single quotes. By morning, the Apaches had cleaned the barn. The trough was full. Someone had even reinforced the north-facing wall with extra beams. Beau checked it himself. The work was clean. Better than his, if he was being honest. Later that day, he caught the tall warrior out by the well, fixing a bucket rope without being asked. His movements were precise, purposeful. Beau said nothing, just watched from the shade of the porch. That evening, Nahi approached the cabin, limping. She held out a bundle wrapped in hide. What's that? Rabbit, she said. He hunted it before dawn. Beau took it. The meat was cleanly dressed. Not a single hair left on the flesh. He looked up, but Red Elk, he didn't know the man's name yet, was already walking back toward the barn. Got a name? Beau called. The man paused, barely turning his head. Red Elk. Beau watched him disappear into the mist again. That night, he cooked the rabbit, split it, and left a portion by the barn door. Said nothing. Just walked back to his porch and sat in silence. By morning, the tin plate was gone. Winter crept closer. The animals knew before the sky did. The cows refused to wander far from the barn. The hawks circled lower. Even the wind changed direction, moving not to cool, but to bite. Beau worked from dawn to dusk, chopping firewood, reinforcing the back window of the cabin, checking the fence line twice a day. He expected the Apaches to leave. They didn't. Instead, they began to help. One morning, 2 boys trailed Beau to the goat shed, mimicking his movements. One held nails. The other handed him a hammer. He didn't speak to them, but he didn't chase them off either. Later, Nahi brought him a woven strap for Whiskey's neck. For dog, she said. Beau nodded once. His name's Whiskey. She smiled, just barely. Like drink? Exactly like that. For a man who hadn't heard laughter in years, that half-smile echoed in his chest longer than he cared to admit. Still, not everything was calm. One afternoon, Beau heard hoofs more than one. He stepped off the porch, rifle already in hand. From the east came a group of riders, 4 men, hard-faced, wearing dust and suspicion like badges. The one in front was Sheriff Cormac. Well now, Cormac said, drawing up his reins. Didn't expect to find you playing nursemaid to a pack of redskins, McCrae. Beau didn't smile. They're not causing trouble. That right? Cormac leaned forward in the saddle. That tall one, he ain't the same bastard that knifed a trader out in Laramie, is he? No. Seen proof? Beau didn't blink. I've seen enough, the sheriff chuckled. World's changing, McCrae. Used to be men like you knew which side they were on. I still do, Beau said. It's the side that ain't burning women and children in their sleep. A long pause, then Cormac spat into the dirt. Winter's comin'. You freeze. Don't expect the town to come running. Wasn't planning on it. They rode off that evening. Beau sat on the porch long after sunset, watching the stars come in. Red Elk appeared in the darkness, carrying a split log for the fire pile. He placed it beside the others, then paused, glancing toward Beau's rifle leaning against the post. Why did you lie? Red Elk asked. Beau looked up. It was the first time he'd heard the man speak directly. 'Cause they'd come back with fire if I told the truth? But Beau said. Red Elk nodded once. You're not like the others. Don't mean I trust you. I don't trust you either, Red Elk said. Then turned and walked off. Somewhere, behind the barn, the children were singing a quiet tune in their own language. It was a slow, gentle rhythm that reminded Beau of Emma's voice in the kitchen, humming while she stirred stew. He rubbed his jaw, sat back in the chair, and whispered to himself, well, hell. The frost came hard that week, early, unexpected. Beau woke to a layer of white across the grass, thin as flour but cold enough to make the hinges in his knees creak. The breath from his mouth floated like ghosts in the morning light. Inside the barn, they were already moving. Red elk hauled water buckets, steam rising from the rims. Nahi and the older women wrapped the children in stitched hide. One of the boys, Taza, he'd heard someone call him, was helping Beau's goat deliver. Her kid, no one told him how. He just knew. Beau watched from the shadow of the doorway. He didn't say a word, but he noticed that evening Red Elk appeared at the cabin door. Not knocking, just waiting with a nod and a question in his stance. Beau stepped aside. In the dim cabin, they sat across from each other. Beau poured them each a tin cup of coffee. They drank in silence, firelight dancing over the walls. Finally, Beau spoke. "You got family?" Red Elk stared into the flames. "All gone. Some from soldiers, some from hunger, the rest just left." Beau nodded. "Same." They didn't talk again that night, but when Red Elk stood to leave, he picked up one of the logs from beside the hearth and carried it outside without being asked. They began working together. First in simple tasks, mending fence lines, setting traps, pulling water from the frozen well. Red Elk never spoke more than needed, but he watched. He learned one morning a calf got stuck in the mud down by the creek. Beau went after it, but his boot caught on a root, and he pitched forward into the freezing water. Red Elk was already there, arms hooked beneath Beau's shoulders, hauling him out before he could shout. They sat side by side near a fire afterward, steam rising from Beau's soaked shirt. "Next time," Beau grunted, "maybe let the calf drown." Red Elk handed him a dry blanket and said nothing. Nahi's limp was worse that week. The wound hadn't festered, but cold seeped into it. Beau found an old pair of his late wife's boots and quietly placed them near the barn door. Didn't tell anyone. The next day they were gone. 2 days later, she passed him near the well wearing them. She didn't say thank you, but she met his eyes and nodded. That was enough. The nights turned darker. Coyotes came closer. Something in the air shifted. Then it happened. Beau returned from the far pasture with whiskey, trotting ahead, and found smoke rising from the west fence line. The barn hadn't caught, but one of the sheds was burned halfway through. 2 cows missing. Tracks in the dirt, boot prints. Not Apache. Beau kneeled, studying them. Red Elk crouched beside him. "White men," Red Elk said. "Cowards. They'll come back." Beau rose slowly. "Let 'em." The next day, Beau rode into town. People stared as he passed, same as always. But this time, he noticed it different, harder, angrier. Inside the general store, the clerk barely looked up. "You got supplies for 6? Beau asked. "Sure, if you got the coin." "I do." Behind him, a pair of ranch hands muttered under their breath. "Traitor," one said. "Feeding the enemy," said the other. Beau turned slowly. His voice was calm, steady. "You boys got something to say. Say it where I can hear it." They didn't. He left with flour, beans, salt, bullets, and 2 cans of kerosene. He saw the sheriff on the way out. Cormac tipped his hat without smiling. "You should think real careful who you feed this winter, McCrae. Might find yourself on the wrong side of hungry." Beau stared him down. "I've been hungry before." He rode home without looking back. That night, he called Red Elk into the house. On the table, nails, boards, 2 jars of whiskey. "We're building traps," Beau said. Red Elk smiled for the first time. Over the next few days, they laid snares in the ridge pass, dug shallow ditches along the southern fence line and covered them with brush, created bottle alarms on strings that would rattle if disturbed. Beau taught Red Elk how to use the Winchester. Red Elk taught Beau how to move without being seen. They were never friends, but they became something better, allies. The kind you bled beside. One night, Beau sat near the fire, sharpening a blade. The children were asleep in the barn. Nahi sat nearby, sewing a leather pouch. She looked up. "You do not sleep well." Beau didn't respond. "Your son," she said gently. "Was he afraid of storms?" Beau's eyes lifted slowly. His voice cracked as he answered. "He used to climb into bed when they came. Said the wind sounded like wolves." Nahi smiled. My little brother used to say the same. They sat in silence after that. No need for more. The next morning, Beau woke early. Snow had come in the night. Not heavy, but enough. He walked the fence line while the wind bit through his coat. Halfway down the ridge, he found a small bundle left on a stump wrapped in hide. Inside, 3 beads, one carved with an eagle, another with a moon, and one with a wolf, a message. He looked up to the hills. They're watching, he whispered. He hurried back. He found Red Elk in the goat shed tending to a weak kid. Beau handed him the beads. They're sending a warning? Red Elk nodded. It means attack before the next full moon. How many? 5, maybe 6. They want the land. Beau took a long breath. This ain't just about cattle, then. No, Red Elk met his eyes. It's about who lives and who doesn't. The night, Beau opened the floorboards beneath the bed, pulled out a small, velvet-trapped bundle. Inside, 2 pistols. His father's. He handed one to Red Elk. You know how to use it? I do now. Beau stared into the fire. I ain't fought beside another man since Cold Harbor. But if I'm going to die, You won't, Red? Elk said. You have too much to protect. Beau nodded slowly. For the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. Dawn came slow. Snow blanketed the land like a shroud, silent, still, deceptive. The trees on the far ridge were barely visible in the haze, but Beau knew what lay beyond them. He could feel it in his bones, the same way he used to feel cavalry. Charges before they came screaming over the hills in Virginia. Inside the barn, Nahi packed satchels with jerky and grain. The children were already wrapped in layers. Red Elk stood near the door, tying a knife to his thigh. Beau entered and set the map on the table. There's a cave 2 miles east, he said. Shelter, water, if we don't come back. Nahi stopped him. Don't. He met her eyes. She was stronger than her frame showed. I know what this is, she said. But I won't say goodbye? Beau nodded once, then knelt before the youngest boy, the one who hadn't spoken since they arrived. Protect them, little man, he said, placing a small silver coin in the boy's palm. You're the one they'll listen to. He looked at Nahi one last time. Keep going, he said. Then he and Red Elk stepped out into the white. They positioned themselves near the ridge pass, the narrowest route down toward the ranch. It was flanked by rocks, snow-laden trees, and a dead man's silence. Beau set the last of the bottle alarms while Red Elk covered their tracks behind them. Every motion was practiced. Efficient, no panic. Just focus. Then came the distant clatter of hooves, 6 riders, guns drawn, scarves over their mouths. Not soldiers worse, freebooters, land thieves who moved like snakes and shot like they were born to it. They stopped just short of the ridge, scanning the ground. One shouted, Ranch is just down this hill. He's got cattle, maybe more. Another chuckled, He's got Injuns. Let's burn 'em out and take what's left. Beau looked to Red Elk, who nodded. Beau gave the signal, a single whistle between his teeth, the moment the first rider crossed the tripwire. The bottle alarms shrieked like banshees, and the powder trap beneath the snow exploded, sending smoke and soil into the sky. Chaos. Beau fired first Winchester steady, 2 riders down before the rest could blink. Red Elk moved like a wraith, silent, fast, knife flashing in the mist. One rider never even saw him coming. Gunfire echoed off the rocks. The air filled with smoke, snow, and blood. A bullet grazed Beau's shoulder, hot and sharp, but he kept shooting. He hadn't felt this alive in a decade, not since war. Not since loss. Red Elk was pinned behind a tree. One of the last riders circled wide, flanking him. Beau saw it too late. The bandit raised his rifle. Beau screamed, Red! Red Elk spun, caught the bullet in his side. He went down, hard. Beau roared and charged, pistol drawn now, slamming into the shooter. They rolled. In the snow, fists, elbows, fury. The bandit pulled a knife. Beau grabbed it by the blade, palm splitting open, and drove it into the man's throat. Silence returned in pieces. 3 bodies lay in the snow. The 4th crawled away, bleeding, vanishing into the trees. Beau dropped to his knees beside Red Elk. You hold on, he growled. You hear me? You hold the hell on. Red Elk coughed, blood dark on his lips. You fight like a bear? Beau laughed, then almost wept. Damn right I do. They made it back by dusk. Now he ran to meet them. The children cried when they saw Red Elk. They'd thought him already dead. Beau helped carry him to the cabin, where he laid him out by the fire and pressed hot cloth to the wound. He didn't sleep, just sat beside him, watching the flames dance. Red Elk stirred once. You're not alone anymore. Beau gripped his hand. Neither are you. Spring came late that year, but it came. Beau stood at the fence line, watching the hills. The snow had melted. The Hawks had returned. The Apache camp was gone now. They'd left a week earlier, under gray skies and soft wind. No ceremony, just quiet farewells and handshakes that meant more than words. Red Elk had walked without help. A scar on his side, but fire in his eyes. Before he left, he handed Beau something, a hawk feather. No more ghosts, he said. Only sky. Now Beau tucked that feather behind the barn door. Not as a warning, as a memory. A few days later, a wagon arrived. A young family man, woman, and 2 boys stood by the front gate, eyes wary. We heard this land's safe, the man said. They say the man here doesn't turn folk away. Beau looked at them a long time, then opened the gate. There's room. That evening he sat on the porch, whiskey asleep beside him. A breeze moved through the grass. The house behind him glowed warm, alive. His voice broke the silence. This land don't forget who we were, he said. But sometimes it forgives us anyway. Fade out.